Okay, now we will be having a keynote address by His Venerable Dr. Anil Sakya of Wat Bawanivet. He will be giving us a lot of wisdom. And we will be having Dr. Subchai Virapuchong, Vice Chairman and Secretary General of Bodhikiya Vidyalaya 980, who he will guide us about the path to the responsibilities. So welcome His Venerable and Dr. Subchai.
So good morning, Joel. Hope that you had a good evening last night with a cruise dinner and had a good sleep so that you can be fresh today. Thank you for many of us who come from different faith group. I noticed that there's the Thai Brahmin here, which is very unique, which is very different from what you used to see in the Indian Brahmin. We have a very Thai Brahmin here. And then I also see some of the other group here, so thank you for coming. Well, this is something very interesting and very new way of thinking, I guess, that from Asia, because the faith for action has been mainly dominated in the West, and then we hardly hear about that. Of course, the role played by the OHCHR, Human Commission, is very difficult for me. I guess that I don't have that right, I guess. The High Commission of the Human Rights has been a very, very influential organization that actually in every country and every community, we have to really rely on such organization to keep the balance of the things. As today I am asked by the organizers, although I am also part of the organizing committee. So anyway, I was asked to say something about reconciling diversity and universality through Dharma, the ethical foundations of rights and responsibility. Well, 77 years ago, the world came together to proclaim the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, a moral compass for humanity after the devastation of war. That declaration was and still a profound statement of faith in human dignity, that every person is born free and equal in rights and should be allowed to live their life in the best possible way. Yet, we know this version remains unfinished. Human rights continue to revolve, shaped and sometimes challenged by deep diversities of our world, cultural, spiritual, and moral. It is often assumed that human rights have one single meaning. But when we listen carefully to the moral tradition of different civilizations, we find that understanding right is deeply contextual. In the West, rights are often understood as individual entitlements. In much of Asia, they are viewed through relationship as responsibilities within a web of community and interdependence. In other words, where the language of law speaks rights, in Asian Dharma-based tradition, they express as responsibilities and mutual obligations. Thus, the Asian moral imaginations remind us that what sustains human dignity is not only what we demand, but what we give. This perspective invites us to balance the language of rights with the language of responsibilities, and to root both in the deeper principle of Dharma. And in truth, These two languages are not opposites. They are two halves of the same whole. The Sanskrit word dharma, or in Pali is dhamma, means that which upholds or that which sustains. It refers to the natural and moral law that maintain harmony in the universe. It is the principle that keeps life in balance, sustaining justice, peace, and well-being. In this sense, dharma is not merely a religious concept. It is what we might today call sustainability in action. In fact, what the Buddha delivered, his first sermon after enlightenment, the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, or turning the wheel of the Dharma, he was in essence speaking of the sustainable development in action. That discourse was not a dogma, but a guide to balance, the middle way which sustained well-being and harmony of all beings. Dharma, therefore, is sustainability in its truest and most holistic sense, spiritual, ethical, ecological, and social. It is a timeless wisdom of how to live in harmony with oneself, with others, and with the natural world. It teaches that all life is interdependent and that our happiness is inseparable from the happiness of others. My happiness depends on yours. Your peace sustains mine. This understanding that all life is interwoven is the bridge that reconciles diversity and universality. The UDHR, drafted in 1948, was a magnificent step towards universal justice. Yet, like all human creations, it carries the marks of its time. For example, the repeated use of the pronoun his without her, though unintentional, reminds us that even universal ideals evolve through human limitation. The UDHR, like Dharma, must continue to evolve to better reflect the cultural, spiritual, and ethical diversities of humanity. It is not finished text, but a living process, a moral dialogue that must keep turning like the wheel of the Dhamma itself. The Buddha's teaching of the middle way provides timeless wisdom for the practice of human rights today. We see two extremes in the modern world. One where rights are neglected, where life, liberty, and dignity are denied. The other where rights are absolutized, where people become consumed by entitlement, forgetting compassion and collective responsibility. Both lead to imbalance. The middle way teaches balance, to claim our right with mindfulness and to fulfill our duties with compassion. Justice without compassion becomes cold. Compassion without justice becomes weak. The middle way unites both, giving us a vision of human rights rooted in balance, not conflict. In this balance lies the seed of sustainable and peaceful society. In Buddhism, the ethical foundation of Dharma is expressed through the 5 precepts, known as Sinha Panchasila. 1. Learn to abstain from taking life, learn to abstain from taking what is not given, learn to abstain from the sensual misconduct, learn to abstain from the false speech, and learn to abstain from the intoxicant that could the mind. These precepts are not commandments, but voluntary disciplines, ethical commitments to protect life, protect property, protect dignity, protect truth, and encourage mindfulness. So, this is among these 5 precepts, which is put in a very simple word, as a foundations, as a truly human. being who respect the right of others. In that 5 precepts, I just want to really focus on the third one, which actually we understand, obviously, said that particularly very, very kind of a interpretation, I guess, or kind of just a shifting the interpretation. They said sexual misconduct. But based on the Pali term, the kamismichachara, is often translated as a refraining from the sexual misconduct, but its essence is much, much far deeper. In the sense, it means one should not infringe upon the rights of others through the 5 senses, to respect the personal, emotional, and spiritual boundaries of every being. In this sense, the 3rd precept directly encapsulates the earliest concept of human rights taught by the Buddha himself 2,500 years ago. It upholds the principle that each being is sovereign over their own body, dignity, and freedom. A vision of respect that transcends gender, status, and all species. When practiced sincerely, the 5 precepts become a living constitution, a Dharma-based human rights framework rooted in compassion, restraint, and mutual respect. Guided by Dharma, he renounced violence and proclaimed the equality of all beings and tolerance for all faith. One of the great King Asoka, who was in the 3rd century BCE. And in his edicts, it is well carved that in stone across the vast empire of the Indian subcontinent, that he affirmed that justice, fairness, and the welfare of including animals was there. He declared, it is my desire that should be uniformity in law and uniformity in justice. These were among the earliest articulation of universal moral law, echoing the same principle later enshrined in the UDHR. Asoka's Dharma, like the UDHR, affirmed the same truth, that the foundation of peace is compassion in action. And this verse is we always hear from His Holiness Dalai Lama as well. What is the word religion? He said that my religion is a compassion in action. Distinguished friends, allow me to now reconnect these reflections to the United Nations Faith for Right initiative. This initiative invites the world's faith traditions to work together to promote human dignity, equality, and peace, to transform belief into shared ethical action. In this noble effort, the Dharma tradition, Buddhism, Hinduism, Jainism, Sikhism, and others can play a vital and distinctive role. The Dharma approaches begin not from divine command, but from direct realization of interdependence and compassion. It seems that human rights, not only as a protection from the harm, but as an expression of inner awakening, a reflection to the truth that all beings share the same nature of suffering and hope. 1. An ethical shift from entitlement to responsibility. So integrating the Dharma into the faith of rights framework can offer 3 valuable contributions. 1. An ethical shift from entitlement to responsibility. Dharma reminds us that rights are sustained by duties, that compassion is the guardian of justice. 2. A universal language of compassion. Dharma transcends creed or doctrine. It speaks through the value of nonviolence, mindfulness, and interdependence, value that unite all faiths. And 3, a path inner transformation. The Buddha taught that outer peace arises from inner peace. True human rights flourish only when the human mind is purified by greed, hatred, and delusion. Integrating Dharma into the faith of right initiative, I would thus expand human rights discourse from a legal enforcement to spiritual responsibility, from political aspiration to ethical practice. It would guide humanity from the struggle for rights to the cultivation of a caring and compassionate society. This integration is not about replacing one system with another, but about creating harmony between universal law and inner truth, between rights and dharma. Rights protect us, but they cannot by themselves create peace. Peace arises when rights are balanced with compassion. A society that cultivates empathy and mindfulness no longer needs to enforce morality, because moral awareness rises naturally from the heart. That is the vision of Dharma, to transform human rights from external law into inner virtue, so that law and love become one. That is the essence of Dharma. And that is a deeper goal of the Faith of Right initiative, to awaken in each human heart the spirit that sustains peace. Dharma teaches that diversity and universality are not opposite. They are interdependent truths. In the teaching of the dependent origination, the Buddha said, all things arises in dependence upon cause and conditions. Thus, no person, no culture, and no right exists in isolation. Each is sustained by the whole. This truth reminds us that we are not separate. My dignity depends on yours. My freedom depends on the peace of others. To honor this interdependence is to reconcile diversity with universality. To recognize that we are many in form, but one in essence. Diversity and universality are not contradictions. They are reflection of the same Dharma of interbeing. Finally, I would like to propose 7 pathways for future collaboration between Dharma-based tradition and Faith for Rights framework. 1. Establish a Dharma and Right working group. I propose the creation of Dharma and Right working group within the Faith of Rights network. Its goal to explore how Dharma-based values, truth, compassion, self-restraint, interdependence, and justice can enrich and contextualize universal human rights education and advocacy. This group would bring together scholars, faith leaders, and practitioners from Hindu, Buddhist, Jain, Sikh background, alongside Christianity, Judaism, Islam representative who are interested in ethical living and sustainability. 2. Develop Dharma-inspired learning modules for the Faith for Rights Academy. I suggest that the Faith for Right Academy include Dharma-centered learning modules focused on the ethical responsibility, non-harming, and mindful existence. These can illustrate how Dharma principles resonate with the 18 Faith of the Right commitments, especially those concerning dignity, non-discrimination, and the care for creation. Such modules could be piloted in monastic, temple, and interfaith educational institutions across Asia. 3. Host Dharma dialogue on Faith for Right in Asia. I propose organizing regional dialogues and a community workshop under the Faith for Right framework in Dharma-based regions such as Cambodia, Thailand, India, Bhutan, Nepal, and so on. Each dialogue can explore themes like harmony as a human rights, interdependence and a global responsibility, or even sustainability through Dharma. These gatherings could showcase how ancient moral frameworks remain deeply relevant to modern human rights challenges. 4. Integrate Dharma principles into sustainability and a climate justice initiative. Highlight the Dharma as its essence is the law of balance and a right relationship with self, others, and the nature. I suggest that Faith for Right collaborate with Dharma-based ecological movement and faith communities to promote environmental right as human rights. Yesterday, we went through the ceremony, which is very, very typical. It has been carried on from 2,500 years ago. The robe itself, just given the king gave a piece of white cloth, but within that a few hours, we made it to a certain ready-made robe by cutting, by sewing, by dyeing and drying. We finished that cloth about 2 o'clock in the morning. And then we said that we got a one piece of cloth. Who is suitable to get that among the hundreds of monks? We are kind of using very recycled idea, kind of a very, very honoring the nature and how do we live as a compassionate world. So the fifth, launch a compassionate society initiative. I advocate for a new Faith for Right initiative titled Compassionate Societies, aimed at promoting ethical leadership, mindfulness in public service, and community care rooted in Dharma-based virtues. The present Thai king, His Majesty the King Rama, kind of a very, very corner project is that once he got into the throne, he used the word Chit Asa, which basically means that he said that we have to really change the whole perspective by public service, by voluntary public service. It's one of the pilot project His Majesty King, doing through all over the country. Using not even the money, single penny, but able to mobilize, able to change all the traditions, everything what is going on in names of a development, in names of a nature, in terms of climate change, and even names of the old belief. So, 6, establish a research hub on Dharma, tradition, and human rights. I suggest forming a Dharma tradition and human rights research network, possibly in partnership with the leading universities and monastic institute in Asia. This research could document how Dharma-based civilization historically linked moral law with social justice and how those insights can contribute to a global human rights discourse today. Last, the seventh, which is the 1 week of our life, draft a shared ethical charter on Dharma and human rights. I encourage the creation of a shared ethical charter uniting Dharma-based moral values with the Faith for Rights commitments. The charter could affirm principles such as the unity of life and interdependence of all beings, responsibility as a natural counterpart of rights, compassion and truth as a universal moral foundation. This would serve as a moral bridge between a diverse religious and a humanistic tradition. Dear friends, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights gives us a legal foundation for justice. The Dharma gives us spiritual foundation of sustainability. Together, they can lead humanity towards a future that is lawful and loving, diverse and harmonious, responsible and free. With Dharma informs the Faith for Right initiatives, we begin to see human rights not just as policy, but as a part of awakening, a journey towards more compassionate, mindful, and peaceful humanity. When Dharma informs human rights and compassion become the measure of justice, the wheel of the Dharma turns once more, guiding us towards a sustainable and peaceful world for all beings. That is how we may reconcile diversity and universality through the living Dharma that upholds all life. Well, after a long deliberation, please allow me to end by saying, Dharma reminds us that human rights are not granted, they are realized through righteous living. When faith traditions stand together in compassion and responsibility, we move from protecting rights to cultivating harmony. This is the future of faithful rights, a future rooted in the Dharma, where universality is not a concept, but a lived experience. Thank you. May all beings be safe. May all beings be free from suffering. May all beings live in peace.